The first thing we're going to do is go over some of the minimum basic tools that are be required to get the job done. We're going to start off with the tools, and my first recommendation to you would be to get some good gloves, some good rubber gloves. If you get some rubber gloves, it should help you with your grip on the items after you get oil on them. Also, make sure that they go up your arm. I just went to the local Walmart and picked up some dishwashing gloves. So that's what these are, and they were only a couple dollars to pick them up, but they go all the way up the arm, which really helps when you initially pull that plug and do the oil filter. So when it's dripping down your arm, you have a little bit of time to catch it so it doesn't burn you. Your next thing that you're going to need will be some sockets and some wrenches, okay? It is preferred that you have a breaker bar available because your oil plug may become stuck after use, after heating and cooling. So you'll want some wrenches with hopefully a breaker bar. Next thing you'll want is an oil filter wrench. Most of these are designed to clamp on as you pull it taut. And that's what you're going to use to help get your oil filter loose. Your next thing is going to be a torque wrench, because whenever you put your oil plug back in, you want it to be torqued back to specification. If you do it too tight, then it's not going to come back out, and if you do it too loose, then you may have an oil leak. Some other recommendations for tools that might make the job easier, other than you will need an oil pan to catch some of the oil, but this is a specific oil pan where I can pull the plug right here on the top and it all just drains into it. It does have a cap, so I can dump it whenever it's needed. I can take it to the local shop, but I can also store it whenever it's not needed. So that is opposed to this particular kit here. Now this kit is available at your local AutoZone or whatnot. They usually sell everything that's seen here in the kit, and it's about $30 to include a big 5-quart gallon of, or 5-quart oil. So my truck takes 6 quarts, so I had to get the 5 quarts plus another one in addition to that. And it comes with the oil filter, with an oil funnel, some hand cleaner, shop towels, and an oil pan. The next two things that will make the job a little bit easier are going to be ramps for your vehicle to get a little bit more clearance under there, and also a dolly that you can slide under there with. And the first thing we're looking at right now, this is the oil filter, and you'll need an oil filter wrench to get this off. The next thing we're going to be looking at is it's on this, and then you see this other nut that's right here. That's going to be your actual oil plug. A lot of time, if somebody else has already done an oil change on your vehicle, they'll have colored paint on it. Hopefully you can see that there. So it'll have some colored paint on it, and that should be a good indication of what your oil plug is. So those are two things we're looking at here. Do also make sure, huge precaution, that if you did warm up your vehicle to get the oil moving a little bit more freely, that a lot of things under here are going to be hot. So you have your exhaust that's on either side. So do make sure that if you're wearing gloves, hopefully they're nice and thick enough to help protect you from the heat of the oil as it comes out, and then of other objects as you're down here. And just do be mindful of everything that you touch down here, because something may be warm. First step we're going to do here, what I always like to start off with, is going to be your oil plug. So it's what we're looking at right here. Now I have an open end wrench right here, and we're going to use that to start getting it going. So if this is in here nice and hard, then we will need to be using a breaker bar, and usually have that with the socket set. So we're going to go ahead and start cranking it. And mine was a little bit loose. I had kind of loosened it up just a little bit before. Then after you get to a certain point, do make sure that your oil pan is centered right underneath it, and then you can hand twist it the rest of the way off. So do be prepared for some oil to start coming out. Now it should have some oil pressure behind it, and it'll kind of arc here to begin with. Okay, next thing we're going to do here is we're going to take off the oil filter. So what you're going to do is you'll take your oil filter wrench, just slide it right up over it. Now when you start to tighten it down, when you start to twist it, then it's going to create a clamp-like effect on your filter, and then you'll just turn it left. as you're looking at it. And there is enough room down here in which this can just slide right up and over. After you've got it loosened up initially, do make sure that your oil filter again is over your oil pan. And then you can hand loosen it the rest of the way off. The next part we're going to go over is the reassembly of the oil change process. So the two things that we're going to cover right now are your oil plug. Now that we've pulled this out, what we're going to do before we put it back in is clean it off. Also, what comes in that kit from AutoZone are these shop towels. So these are very absorbent. They work very good, especially for this oil. And I've already cleaned mine off, but you're just going to wipe all of the oil off of your plug. After you've wiped all the oil and stuff off your plug, another reason why we clean this off is because there might be metal fragments in this. If you put this back in with your new oil, it's instantly contaminated. The next portion we're going to do is before you put your oil filter back on, you're just going to put a little bit of oil on the ring right there to help it seal better and help it settle better. So what I do is I just dip my finger right in the new oil. And I'm just going to put it right on this lip here. I'm going to spread it around and I'm going to put it on the threading on the inside. Just make sure this nice new fresh oil is on the filter. Once this is done, then we can get back to putting everything back together. Next step we're going to do is go ahead and put the oil filter back on. So you'll see the threading in there. You'll just put it right up on the thread and start twisting clockwise to your right. You'll be able to hand tighten most of it. The next thing we're going to do is put our oil plug back in place. So the first thing we'll do is just wipe off the area here of any leftover oil. That way we can move the pan out of the way. And then we'll install the plug again. So you can just put that right back in there. And you'll hand tighten it as much as possible. And then your ideal situation is if you have a torque wrench, then you'll torque it per the specifications. If you don't have a torque wrench, then you'll just want to tighten it not too much. If you do it too tight, then you're not going to be able to get it out again, and you will need a breaker bar next time you do it. And you can also risk threading your screws or cross threading them. So what you'll do is just, if you can, find a good torque wrench and then just put your socket onto it. It's the right size. So what you'll do is you'll tighten this. And you just keep on tightening it until you hear a click. As you should have heard right there, we'll do it one more time. So you should hear that click. As soon as you've hit that click, then you've met the torque specifications and you can take it off. And that's the last thing that you'll do for there. You're going to see the engine oil C owner's manual. So it does give you the type that they prefer to put in there. So you just take your cap off. I've already loosened that. So you just take the cap off, and then you'll get, if you got that kit from AutoZone, then you'll have you an oil funnel. So after you put your funnel in, then you're going to go ahead and pour your oil. After I'm done pouring the oil, then I'm going to run the engine for about a minute to let it settle, to let it start circulating through. I'm not going to let it run any longer than that to begin with, because what I want to do at that point is I want to get back underneath the truck and I want to make sure that there's no oil leaks. So at that point I would check the oil plug and make sure that the oil plug doesn't have any leaks, make sure it was tight enough on there, and I'm also going to check the oil filter and make sure that was on there tight enough as well. So we just do want to check for the oil leaks under there. After you've checked for your oil leaks, make sure that there aren't any under there, then you can go ahead, and that pretty much concludes the session for this. You'll just make sure that all your caps are back on, that you have enough oil in there. Check your gauges. If you have any questions, please let me know. That concludes what this portion is. If you need any videos of any other steps in here, or orientations, pictures, anything, go ahead and let me know. You can check out this and other information at the website DIYwithchris.com, where you're going to find a lot of housing stuff, but you'll also find automotive work on there, and everything else is I updated as well. Another site you can check out for DIY stuff is DIY Home Projects for everyhomeowner.com. So the links will be down below. DIY with Chris, giving you the tools to do it yourself.